Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name's Matt Lehman, and we work on Django apps in the stream. We're going to continue on my homeschool app that I've been working on. I did a launch, soft launch. There's not a big splash that I tried to make with it, but I launched the product so that I made it publicly available to sign up, and we're going to work on some things that need to be fixed after that. Observations from my customer, and if we have more time, we'll get into some of the things that need to happen long term to make this subscription service work well. If you have anything you want to ask me, that's what I'm here for, to talk about web development. So feel free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development, and I'll be happy to try and answer your questions as best I can. There are plenty of ways to keep up with me. You can go to my link up above, mattlehman.com, and sign up for an email list there. I write about Python and very much about Django. And there are other ways to keep in touch with me as well. I have my handle is usually MBLehman on GitHub, Twitter, different locations like that. If you're getting value out of this and you want to support me, I would greatly appreciate that. I have an account on Patreon, and it's patreon.com/mblehman. And I use those funds to help pay for podcast hosting and other things I try and do for the Django community. So if you're able to contribute, that would be awesome. I do want to thank my patrons of Rupert, Abdulaziz, Patrick, Eric, and a new patron of Philip. Thank you all for contributing. It's really greatly appreciated. So let's get into the code for this evening. So there are some priority issues that my customer would really like fixed, and I say my customer, but she's also my spouse, so I have some strong motivations to get these things fixed, and we're going to do those. And then if we have more time after that, because I think the first version of these changes are fairly small in what they require, then we'll move on to some longer term things that I also need to do for future potential customers. What I experienced last week after my soft launch is I mentioned it on Twitter, and I had a handful of people sign up. I don't think that they were likely long-term users of the service because there's a lot of data that's associated with being successful with SchoolDesk, and a lot of them did not complete all that data. So there's a couple of indications there. It's either they're just checking out what I did, or my onboarding is so horrible that it's not really clear what to do. So either is maybe true, but I need to help guide those kind of people along and to make the experience more compelling and add better hooks to make the product just be present its value clearly. But before we get to those kind of things, let's look at the things that we need to fix that were requests. So as my spouse has been using SchoolDesk for my own kids, she's made an observation that it's not really clear to see what tasks for a particular day are graded or not. And this matters because when looking at the daily view, part of the flow of SchoolDesk is to take each day's work and mark tasks as complete or incomplete so that they can be checked off for the next day. But some tasks can have grades associated with them. And part of the flow is if there are any tasks that are going to have grades, then it takes the user to a second page that says, you need to add the grades before you can proceed. And her comment basically was, it caught her off guard that some of these tasks had grades, and gets to that second page. It's like, oh shoot, I need to add grades now. So what we're going to do is a change that will at least indicate to the user immediately on this daily view that the tasks that need to be done for the student have graded work to go with them. So that's item number one. We'll get to the second item in a bit, but this is what we're going to try and fix first. So let's get into this. I did some documentation. That's what this stuff is here, but we're not going to be looking at that tonight. So we want to go to the core views, and we probably also want to bring up the daily template. So the daily template, another thing we should do is, I guess, bring up the local web development server. The daily template displays a list of tasks for the day, as the name would imply. Let's bring it up so you can see it. And I might have to set up my test data to show an actual example of this, because I don't think it will work by default. There's another thing that we need to factor in, and that's that part of this is that she likes to print out the daily activities that she has so that she can check them off on paper. She's a very tactile kind of person. So we need to make sure that whatever we do works with both the actual view on the browser, but also from a print view. So we're signed into the site, and you can see there are activities that are going to show up here. And let's go to the daily view so that we can see them. And I don't know if any of them are going to, and this is the illustrative of the problem already, I don't know if any of these are graded or not. So I would suspect that the Unit 5 quiz is graded, but I don't know. So let's go to bring up the Health 2 class and go to the Unit 5 quiz. Great, it does have, you can see this icon is here. And so I think what she's basically asking for is a replication of this icon moved over to the daily view, which probably indicates that we can look at how I did it on this template and see if it's going to be a fairly easy change. It may be. So let's do that. So that view that I'm presenting here is, this is the student course view. It's connecting the student and the course and the assignments that that student has, so we can show the completed tasks, but that's not super relevant, but that's where we are. We're going to hide those and come back to this. So rather than go into the view, because we may not actually need to go to the view, the data might already be there. Let's go to the student course template. So that's under students course, excuse me. And let's see if we can find that item. I don't actually know what the markup is going to be, so let's inspect it to get to it quickly. What do we have here? So we're looking for something that has the title of graded task. It's going to be what's in the template. And here it is. It looks like I have this here, but I don't remember this method being on a task. So I have a feeling that this view had to do something special to make that possible. And I think I know why, but let's go over to that view and see what that code is that will make that work. And yeah, here it is. So the reason that this gets a little complicated is because the association between a task and whether it's graded or not is not some kind of Boolean attribute. It's actually a one-to-one field. So I don't know that I modeled this correctly. So there can be some debate about that aspect. But what I do have in here is that the one-to-one field, in order to check that something is present without actually fetching it for a one-to-one, you have to use hasAttr, which I think is odd, frankly. I don't know why Django works this way. I guess if there's no other, maybe there's no other real way for this to work, because if you try to do course task.graded work, it's going to go do a database fetch on that. So the way that this was done is to add this to the task. But as I'm looking at this, I feel like there could be a Boolean. Like there's no reason. This view is doing a lot of work just to make this, like, look at what's in this dictionary. It's asking two things, or it's containing two things. One is the task itself, and the other is an attribute about the task. So really, it should to me indicate, why doesn't it just check that? Why doesn't the course task just have a method that does this, so that instead of wrapping it up anytime I wanted to use this in a view, I could return something simpler? And I think that's where I'm going to go with this. So I'm not going to fix this particular Django view. Well, maybe I'll fix that later. But I think the correct course of action is to give a good property onto the task. And the best property name I can think of is is graded. That seems like the simplest thing. So let's go into the course model and find where the task is defined. Here it is right here. And we have is running, has many grade levels. So there's already some properties here. And let's close some other stuff so we can actually see some things. It's getting a little crowded. So there's not a lot on this model. So we'll add a new property. And I'm going to put it right here. But before we do that, let's create a new test. Let's go into the course test models. And that'll give us a spot to go from. I'm going to find is running, and I think we'll add the new one. So we'll add test is graded is what I want the property to be called. And we'll say check if a task is has associated graded work. And I think to do this, we'll use, what will we use? Well, you need to use oh, I'm putting this in the wrong spot. I'm about to put this on the course. That's not correct. This needs to go on the task, which is lower in this model. So let's make sure that this doesn't exist, because there's always that chance that it does. Okay, so it doesn't exist. And let's see, my computer is deciding to rev up on me. I don't know what's going on here. Hopefully it's not too noisy for y'all. So let's move this down and go to the course task. And we can see that the course task has a few tests on it. It doesn't have any properties, so I'm going to put this after. Yep, put it all after this stuff, since there are no properties. And we will create a couple of tasks. I'm going to cheat and use one from up here. In fact, I'll use this has graded work one because it's going to be relevant to what we need. And so we need two tasks. So this will be the graded task, and this will be the task. I guess technically these could be separate tests, but I feel like that's overkill. I'm okay with kind of combining. For checking a Boolean property, it seems reasonable to check both of the Boolean states in a single test, especially considering that the setup is not very complex. So we're going to have the task and the graded task, and the difference between the two is one has the graded work associated with it and one does not. So then we want to do a couple of assertions. So we want to assert that the graded task is graded. And again, this property doesn't exist yet, so this will fail, should fail. And the other thing we want to do is we want to assert that the ungraded task is false. So we just want to say that it's not is graded. We run this test, we get no attribute, which is not surprising, right? We haven't implemented this yet. And then we can come down to the actual model. So here we are in the model. So the model has all of its methods here, and it has class methods. And I always debate, like, where should properties go? And I never have come up with a consistent answer. I think I'm going to put it after a class method. I don't really have any rhyme or reason for doing that, but it seems like a decent spot. So we've got a property, and it's going to be is graded and structured like that. And we'll say check if the task is graded. That doc string is not the most useful thing in the world, but it's nice to be thorough, I think. And our implementation is not going to be that much. It's going to be the has attr check, and it's going to be on self because this is the object itself, and we want to check for the graded work. And by doing that, it should do what we would hope Django would be able to do, but is not quite able to do. It adds the nicer interface to checking on a one-for-one. So now we have a very, in my opinion, simple way to check if the task is graded or not. That'll be useful for years to come, I'm sure, especially if I modeled all of this stuff incorrectly. It'll just be smooth over that. In fact, I had somebody in the stream a couple months ago ask me, like, why did you model it that way? And I didn't really have a good answer. I don't know what was exactly going through my brain at that time. And it's not like I couldn't change it now and make it a Boolean. I'll leave it with the flexibility and just add some methods that help support it. But I guess maybe it's a cautionary tale of be careful with your data model, because you may overcomplicate what you actually need. So let's return to the student course template. And I want to return here because I really just want the SVG. I want this block. In fact, it's probably, well, I don't know how much we need. So let's keep this up and then also bring up the daily template. So the daily template has on it, what does it have? It already has some buttons to show. It has an edit icon. It has a plus button if there's no task scheduled. I'm not positive yet where I need to put this and how I want to put this. So we're gonna play with this and until it looks right. And the let's give this maybe some more space to look at, because we don't need a ton of space from the area below. So we have the flex row here. I guess we're way down here where we actually need to start thinking about these bits. And I apologize, it's been a little bit while since I've looked at this. So I think it's a couple of different kinds of rows that are embedded into the same for loop. So we have this for loop that goes over all of the courses, and then each one of these has a course schedule, and then it looks for the task for that schedule. Because this is the daily view, so one course gets one task if it has any work. But there are actually 3 different states that can be accounted for, I think. Yeah. So not all of them are going to even have things that need to display this, but we probably need to consider all 3 of the different states. So one is a completed version of this task. In fact, let's do that. Let's mark this one as complete, and we'll save it so that we can have the 3 different states represented. You can see them right at the top here. So you can have completed, which means that the student has coursework associated with the tasks. Coursework is a different model. You can have nothing on the schedule, which is there's nothing you can even put, and then you can have this incomplete version. The ones where we need to include the graded task icon naturally are going to be these 2 states and not the middle one. But we might need to consider the middle one from a legibility perspective, because the spacing might get funny. So I think I want to to be consistent with over here, I think I need to put the icon in front of the edit icon. But think about what that's going to do. If you have an icon in front and then space when there's not in front, then this plus is going to get kind of wonky. So we'll have to probably put some little fix in there to add a little bit of div padding. All right, so we know that it has to come in here. We know that we want to check the task. Oh, this gets even more tricky. Okay, maybe not. One thing at a time. I'm getting ahead of myself. So we have this div here, and I think we want just this chunk of stuff here. I'm going to put it, for the moment, right above this other div. And I'm going to give it some space just so we can very clearly see this chunk of new work. So the thing that we want to get access to is we look at the course schedule and we look at the task from it and we check the isGraded property. And then if that's true, then we want to show this SVG icon. If it's not true, we're going to add in this spacer div that has a fixed width and height and a right margin. So let's check how that looks. Whoa, okay. So clearly some stuff is not the same between the two templates here. This came out pretty funky in ways I did not anticipate. You know what it is? I think it's because this other one has a surrounding div that gives it a different kind of scoping. So I think I'm missing that. Might have put it in the wrong spot too. Looks like, I put it outside. Yeah, that's the problem. I have this other edit icon. It's inside of a div class that does width 1/12, and I think it needs to go in here rather than outside of it. So we're going to take the same block and we'll put it inside the div and move it in. So I think that will correct some problems, but not all of them. So now the sizing is clearly wrong. Well, maybe not clearly to you. I take it for granted that I've looked at this stuff for a long time. There is some incorrect sizing about this, I'll put it that way. So that icon is smaller than it should be. I don't know why that is. We need to take a look. What is off about this? I have a feeling it has to do, well, what does it have to do with? Why is this off? So maybe we still need a div around it because check out this div. This one has an anchor tag around it, but it has a class block. And that's the big thing that's calling out to me, is that there is a container on the SVG that helps ensure a certain amount of sizing that is not present on this one above it. So let's try adding that in. And it doesn't need to be an anchor because we're not linking anywhere yet. I'll change that in the future because that's the second half of what my spouse is looking for. In fact, I don't need to put block either. So let's just try and put a div, I guess, for the first step and see what that'll do. Yeah. So just changing that fixes the sizing aspects of it because it switched from the CSS box model and SVG by itself is using inline, I believe. So that's probably the difference of what caused it to suddenly size differently. Okay, we also want it to have the same gray. So we do need some class on here. And we'll say text gray 300. And ultimately, we're going to want the same hover style because this will be a link. So I might as well put it in now. Although that may confuse people, but okay. So we've got this, but look at the impact of this. So what once was previously a nicely aligned thing now looks like it kind of bows. That's what I'm seeing anyway. It's like this is clearly in one position. This is moved off in another position. This is yet another position. Like there's something up here. So we need to correct all of those aspects. I think what I want to do, to me, the spacing between these is looking a little off. So I'm not sure why that is. So let's dig into it and let's compare it. Like look at the spacing between these two. Let's figure out what is going on. What is the relationship? Because I would like to be consistent between those. So this has I copied this, so it has the same margin right padding. And it has the margin, this other one has an MX padding, so it has padding on both sides of those elements. And if you look and compare to what we see on this link, this has a much larger padding of MX4. So let's try bringing that down to 1 and see the effect on that. Wrong page. Okay, that tightens it up a lot. And I think what it did was line up these two now to fit in the box. But I think maybe what was happening is we're actually even getting outside of the grid width of what the container could hold. Yeah, that appears to be the case. So that padding, that margin before was so big that it was breaking outside of the flex box, I think, or it was causing. This is not a table; it's the illusion of a table using a flex box. And so if I don't get the proportions right, then the illusion is broken, and immediately your brain is able to hone in on that and say like, whoa, wait a minute, this is not a table, this is something else, and everything is out of shape. So we've got this has that margin, and that has that other margin. That's still, this isn't quite right though. Something is different. And I think it might have to do with the container. So this is telling me, hovering over the container for these, it's 63.98 pixels wide. And if we inspect, I have a feeling if we inspect this, it's going to tell us a different story. It's actually smaller. Well, that's even more curious. 55 pixels wide. Yet somehow this looks tighter to me. Like something strange is going. It's a different layout model, and I think that means that. And I'm not going to try and correct them to make this fully consistent. I think it just means we need to rethink some of the spacing here. So let's play with that. Let's do. Let's give the graded task a margin of 2 instead to kind of manually push it out a little bit. So I think that is pretty darn close to the spacing that I have over here. So we'll keep that. Okay, so now we have to fix the other things. What's going to happen? So this has fixed. There's actually, I guess, like 3 cases. So there's when something is graded, when something has graded work and is not graded, and when something does not have graded work and is not graded. It gets confusing, but so anyway, I think what I'm saying is like between reading 2 and health 2, we have made those work. But then we have this other category where coursework is off that doesn't have, so there's graded and not graded for coursework. And then there's also this third category that has nothing, which is definitely just going to be an empty spacer. So let's move on. I'm going to then take this tag and indent it 1 just so that we can clearly see it in that if block. And I think the next kind of steps are very similar to what we just did, but it's just a matter of finding the correct placement for it. And this gets even weirder. Now I'm not sure how to handle this, so let me talk it out. It's possible for a day to have more than one task completed in that time frame. And that shows up as a list. And it shows up as a list with breaks. Okay? And you can see that it's looping through the coursework and then it's doing the break. So if that means that this is has to account for that for loop. Well, maybe it's already done for me. So maybe there's not too much to consider. It just needs to go inside of this for loop right here. Because what's going to happen is, like, if there were, it would be possible for in a scenario to have 2 tasks completed on the same day, and then one is graded and one is not, or vice versa, or they're both graded or they're both not, and that means you would have to show the icon in multiple spots. It has to go. Thankfully, this for loop is already factored in that logic. We just need to put it in we need to put the chunk of code inside of the for loop. So we'll come down here to this area, and again, I'm going to give it some space so that we can actually see this chunk, because it is a different chunk to consider. And I should highlight that, you know, this does actually translate to more bytes that have to be transmitted. There's an extra new line character here and here, but I don't really think it's worth fretting about a couple of extra bytes. If it makes your code easier to read, the performance characteristics of those couple of extra bytes that are transmitted over the network are insignificant in the scheme of things. Okay, so we have this coursework, and we need to get to the course task. And the way that we do that is through the coursework itself. So we'll say coursework, and then course task, and then we'll add the isGraded thing. So I think that's the right change here, mostly. I think the other thing we're going to have to make adjustments on is the actual spacing that we added over here. Above, I changed this to, I believe it was 1, right? Yeah, we changed it to an MX1. So now, this scenario is for this one up here. And maybe we can, well, we can test out, we can call this thing complete and test out if it looks the right way after it's done. So I save that, let's refresh. And the effect is, I don't know if you even noticed it on the refresh, but the icon moved over. So let's go ahead and complete this too. And actually we'll see where this will take us. If we save this, it'll take us to a grade page. And I have way more grades than I want to do. Okay, well, this was health 2. And I did a great job. We're going to give ourselves 100. Okay, so now we're here, and we can see that the coursework view also has this. Although now that I'm noticing this, I missed some bottom padding that was different because this is done in a loop. There's a PB2 that needs to be accounted for. And I think that's going to go, let's not put it on the icon. I think that's going to shrink the icon. So let's say PB2 here. Is that going to do it? Yes, okay. And that's a little strange. Ideally, you wouldn't want that bottom margin. So I guess maybe we need, if I want to be pixel perfect, and I kind of do because that's my nature, is we only really need that bottom padding when there's more than one item. So is this worth fixing? Because where would we have to do this? So I think we would have to correct it in 2 spots, which I think we can do. All right, let's do it. So we only want the padding to exist if the for loop has more items to do. So if this is the last loop of the for loop, then we don't want to add more padding to it. In the case where the most normal case, it'll be 1 element, so it would never add that padding. If there were 2 completed items on a day, it would add the padding to the first iteration through the loop and not on the last loop. So we want to say, let's add that in here, and we want to say if, and there's a special variable that you can access when you're inside the context of a for loop. And we want to say if not, I added too many O's, for loop, too many P's. I think it's for loop.last. And then we'll do an end if. Let's check if that's the right syntax. I'm pretty sure it is. So it's gonna, what it's gonna do is should drop the icon down a little bit, which it did. And now we want to do that same thing, same correction for the pencil icon for the other one. So some pixel perfect stuff that I hadn't noticed that also applied, but I just never corrected. So PB2, we want if for loop dot last, and then we want the end if. Whoops. Nope, if not for loop last. Should come down. Yep, great. And it made the whole little, and since it's a one-liner, it made the whole line thinner as well, which is good. Okay, so we've now made this correct for both the two states for incomplete work that's graded or not, and then complete work that's graded or not. The final state is this: there's no task, and all of this is going to do is nudge this over so that the plus button lines up with the pencil icon. And to do that, I think we only need this extra div, this empty div right here. And the no coursework is this last one that we see, and it will go inside of here. And now they are all moved over. I think my eye is playing tricks on me, maybe? Like, are these actually lined up? No, they're not. Something is going on. I switched it to a 2. Is that right? Nope, nope, nope. This is supposed to be MX1 as well. There it is. Okay. Not crazy. My eyes do work. Okay. Now, here's where this gets a bit trickier. We have now made this icon appear what it's supposed to appear. We're going to switch over to the Chrome view, and I'll show you the problem. And I switch over to the Chrome view because it actually has a better print layout. And my spouse uses Chrome regularly, so I want to make sure that her experience matches best there. So I need to log in. And I realize you can't see all of that, so let me shrink this down. And we're on the daily view. Everything looks the same, right? So that's good, but here's the problem. If we go print, whoops. Now, maybe you didn't notice it right away, but there's no icon here. That's what's the problem. And the way this is done is through some print style classes that only apply when you're in the print mode, which is one of the media options that you can have. And the class itself is this print hide CSS class. So what we really need to do, I guess for For the no scheduled task, it doesn't matter. We're never showing a new icon anyway. So we can leave that one alone. But what I do want to do, and what she would desire, what she has mentioned, is that she wants the grade icon to appear on the print view. So we need to incorporate that. Which means, well, how did that get weird like that? Which means that the print hide that is applied for this entire column needs to go away and needs to be applied to elements inside of this column. And I'm wondering, where's the safest place to do that? It gets a little sticky again because of this for loop business. Let's try putting it here. Let's do the simplest thing that I think could work, which is to say, take it off the container and put it on the element inside that we want to have it. So I want it to be hidden for the plus, because on a printout, there's nothing you can do with the plus icon. It's not like you can click a piece of paper and add a new task. So that's why it doesn't appear on there. But we do want to show the grade icon when on the printout, because it's a visual, an indicator of the status. And so let's get Chrome back up. And if I refresh, nothing should have changed. From this point of view, it's the print point of view that we want. And good, there's the icon. Thankfully, I was afraid it might do some weird wrapping stuff. So let's make sure that everything is at 100% scale. Okay, because it would have been possible that this could have wrapped in weird ways and really complicated the story here, but that was not the case. So I think that we get away with the easy change. We come out unscathed, which is very nice. So we need to return and come up to that was the coursework portion of this. We need to now come up to the point where it's the incomplete stuff, and we need to take off the print hide that is on that and add the print hide to the plus button. And we're not going to be able to see that, so we need to incomplete this quiz. Okay. And so now we have the icon again for this different style, which is what we would want to expect to see. Let's do the refresh over here and check it out. And it still has the icon. Great. Okay, I think that's everything. So that's to me, that's pretty interesting part about this project, is that what is a seemingly not very complicated table actually has a lot of state to it that you just don't see under the covers unless you're like looking at the template and you realize, wow, there's a lot of conditions in here that really matter. So let's look at the diff, see what's in there. We added a new property. It checks the has adder and for graded work to make sure that there is a graded work or not. And we wrote the test for it. And then we changed the table. Excuse me. Changed the table to include all the things that we need. And I think that's all right. Still looking at it. Yeah. So let's commit that. Call it done. Well, I guess we should check the tests. Those run. And go back over to GitHub. Okay. And let's see. This is the other task. So there's another part of this task later on which is that she would like any graded work to be clickable on that course page so that you can, if she wanted to, before completing the entire day, she could add a grade for the student at that moment, which is a totally reasonable thing to ask for. But I don't have a place to edit. This is the wrong issue. A place to edit the grade yet. So I need that. And I think it's down. It's actually an older issue now. Where did you go? There it is. And it was something that actually one of my other beta tester, who actually happens to be my sister-in-law, had requested. So we're going to say where this needs to appear. We'll say we'll say add link to the clipboard icon on the daily view. And we also need it for the student course view that we were looking at earlier. Both of those views should have the clipboard icon. But that's a separate issue. I'm not going to get into that one today. I don't want to spend my time on that today, actually. We're really concerned, the primary thing is the visibility of it, which is what she really cared about to start. So this is the actual issue that we're trying to fix. It's number 289. So the tests all ran. We will do that. We'll commit this stuff. We'll say add clipboard icon for graded work. If I could type, graded work on daily page. And that fixes number, what did I just say, 289? Yep. Okay. One down. I thought that took a lot longer than I realized it was going to take. I forgot about all those conditions. So what seems like a simple request sometimes can be shocking. Or surprising. It's more accurate. All right. The other thing that was a priority for her is right now, if I delete a task, so let's see if, let's give this an illustration. There's only a single way to delete a task right now. That's to go to the task. And so on this, we're on the daily view. Actually, the place that she was really talking about was from over here. So we're on this Health 2 page right here. And all of these tasks are clickable. So let's say we want to delete I don't know, these are all safety things. I don't really want to, they're good things. Let's say we want to delete just this first one, just to pick one and be indiscriminate about what we're deleting. So we would click on this, and it says what the previous task is, and that's all good. And then you click the delete button, and it takes you to a page that says, are you sure you want to delete this? And the reason for this is that I don't want willy-nilly deletions happening, and it has to do with making it a post and some other details. When I hit delete, here's where the problem appears. Not in the deletion itself, but where it sends you. This is now the view for the entire course. Okay? This is different from the health, the view specific to that student about what they have and have not completed. And so my spouse would like the ability to go back to where you came from. So if I click the edit button on that other view, when I go through and delete, it'd be nice if it came back all the way to where we started. So we need to propagate that stuff. It's a little bit of state passing. it's doable, and so we're going to do it. And the way it happens is passing along a parameter as a get parameter to each of the subsequent pages in the flow that we want to chain together. So the first page is, where is it? We need to go to the edit page of the detail page first. So every task has a detail page that's associated with it. So it's the course detail or the course task detail page. Or I guess it's the course task form because it does add and delete. So here's where we're going to start. And we want this pattern right here. So we have this already, thankfully, that we can copy from pretty easily. Although it's not quite the same because it's connecting the whole thing directly. Okay, so I forgot. Let's back up even further. So let's go back to this page. This is where we really want to start. In order to come back to this page, we need to send this page itself onto future pages. And the way to do that is to add the URL to all of these URLs that we're linking to. So add this current URL up here to the link as a parameter to follow. And so the format of that is like, it looks like this. So if we're on, well, Twitch wants to do slashes as commands, so I can't fully do it. But if we're on, say, this page is something, imagine there's a slash at the beginning of this, but students, some UUID, and then courses, and then some other UUID, and then a trailing slash. I think that's the page structure that we're on. Yeah, that's what it is. So there's two UUIDs, and the students and courses separate them. And to one of these edit tasks over here, if we look at the structure very carefully, is quite a bit. Oh, it already has the next parameter on there. Oh, that's so good. So there's already some stuff that knows to come back here, and I did that for editing purposes. That's what it was. So there's already good breadcrumbs in this process, which is great news. So it's one less thing to set up. So we actually can, I guess, look at that so you can understand what I was talking about and how that is all set up. In fact, it's probably going to be useful as we need to propagate this because we have to URL encode stuff. Yep. Okay. So we need to pass along all of this stuff to the next page. And by passing it as a query string parameter, and what I mean by that is everything after the question mark. So question mark next equals some value. That is a query string parameter. It goes along with the request. Each template can look for that query string, and if it exists, make a link that passes that along. So I did this for edit. So when you go to the edit page, it passes along the next parameter, and when you save on that page, the edit view code will look for the presence of this next parameter, and if it exists, try to redirect you to that location. So we need to just pass that along to one more step in the chain. So the edit page is the last step, but remember there was that confirmation page. So the delete page, the edit page with the delete button, we will add the next URL, the same thing that's already there, to that delete button. And that delete will go to the delete confirmation page. It's from that delete confirmation page that we can then check and redirect back to where they started. That's a confusing chain, I understand, but that's what needs to happen. So thankfully it's already done here. We already have the URL encoded request path. So that's all good. So I think we have this very simple thing that we need to pass along, which is request get next, is what it looks like in the template. And it's already in this template as the cancel button, but we want to put it as well on this URL to go to the delete page. And the delete page is actually that confirmation page. So at the end of this, we'll add question mark, next, or I guess we'll really need to say, we'll do an if. So if there's a next, so we don't want to go there needlessly. So if request get next, then we want to put on question mark next equals, and then I think we can just say request get next. I think it's already got the right encoding on it. We don't have to like double URL encode things. And then we close that off with an end if. I think that's right. Let's check it out. So this is the edit form. So let's pretend, let's come over to the page here and refresh. And now pretend we're going to edit, we're going to delete the street and car safety one. And let's look at this link and see, inspect it and see how it came out when it rendered. It's a very long URL. I am afraid, I don't know if it actually did the right thing. That looks like a literal character. All right, let's view the source because I don't trust this yet. Sometimes the inspector tries to do some dynamic replacement, which isn't quite what we want. So I think this is the link. Here's the delete button. And you can see these URLs are getting kind of ridiculous, but I think it's still right. So it's got the delete link, which has got a couple of UUIDs in it. And then we have the next link, or the next keyword argument, which is the link to where we would like to return, which is students, some UUID, courses, some UUID, and ends, and has a hash on the end, which I'm hoping will pass along properly. If it doesn't, it's probably okay. The reason behind this hash is to return to that specific task in the list. It makes less sense for the delete because actually we're deleting that. But okay, so that kind of convinces me that that part doesn't really matter. It's not going to hurt anything, because what will happen is if we delete the task, then putting this hash parameter on here, when the browser sees that and doesn't find any anchor ID that has this hash, it's just going to go to the top, which is reasonable because you just deleted it. Okay, so that goes to where we want it to go. The next thing to do is make sure that the view, the delete view, will actually respect that next parameter. So let's go to the course views and let's go find it. So we have the create view, and we'll see in the edit view, here's the edit view. Well, really? Okay. Oh, this course. I keep getting myself thrown by that. We want the course task. The course task views is what we're really talking about. So here's the course task create view. You can see that here's the logic at the view level of what needs to happen. So on the success, it says, hey, if there's a get parameter that's called next, then use that as the next URL for where to go. And this is already here on create, and I'm sure it already exists on the update. And what we need to do is add this chunk of code that's right here to here. I think that's the whole thing. But we should probably test it too. Let's bring up the course test views. And let's look for next. I'm sure there's a test about it. Yeah. Okay. So let's use this same form. Not on the course one though. Let's go to find another one. This is the task create. Okay. This is the kind of thing we want. So let's go to the delete view. Just way down here. Okay. This is the kind of logic we want. We don't need to build a lot of this stuff. What we do want to keep is this URL construction and the fact that it's doing a post, and I think a lot of that is correct, but the setup is what we want to change. So let's find the actual post that's successful, which I believe is this stuff. And come back down here. And I don't know how much of this is identical. We'll check that out in a second. We've got a grade level, good. We have a course for that grade level, good. Don't need this data, as I said. We're not creating one. And we need to change the URL. So it's delete is the actual URL, and the course is what is listed as, but we also need to add the task UUID with task UUID. And then we're doing a post, but there's no data to post because this is a delete request. So that part's the same. So I think we can delete all of this stuff because we don't need to log in twice. And then we'll give it a test doc string. So the delete view redirects to next parameter if present. Okay. So now walking through this, so we have our next URL. Doesn't really care. We don't really care yet what that specific location is for this test. But the rest of this setup is relevant. So we are creating a user, creating a grade level for that user, and a course. I think that it can even be collapsed down into one. I don't think we need to. Well, it's fine. I'll leave it. And then we are creating a task. And yeah. And it passes because I wrote this chunk of code. Let's comment it out just to confirm that it will not pass if the code wasn't there. That's true. Great. So we've got that. Now I think we've put everything through, connected all the dots to see if this is actually correct. So let's check it out. So to be in the right place, let's start back here. Refresh this. So we want to, what's the end goal? We want to delete this lesson here and have it come back to this health 2 mark page. If that works, then we were successful with this test. So I'm going to click this and I'm at the delete page. I'm going to click delete. I'm going to just visually kind of check that what's in here. Yep, at the next parameter where we want to go, I'm going to click delete. Boom, back where we want to be. Excellent. All right, so it was some state management, and this is maybe a bit of the double-edged sword that comes when you're doing server rendered pages. Some benefits of server rendered pages are each page is generally stateless. Like you don't you're not passing, you don't have to think about keeping data, managing data between them. But this is clearly a scenario where we do want that state to be managed between. So because it's not a single page application, because it's not this rich JavaScript client, we have to kind of manually wire some of that stuff together. If this had been a single page app, you could do a delete and probably route inside the JavaScript application to get there. Hey Jake, thanks for joining in. Appreciate your comment there. I'm glad hope you learned something. Have a good night. So I think that brings us to the end of that particular one. We've got the test. There was very little, look how little code we ultimately had to change. This was pretty nice in terms of real change, but it's just understanding which pieces had to change. It's like the old adage, I don't know if you've heard this before, it's like, you have a plumber come to your house and like fixes or maybe it's a washing machine or something like that. Washing machine repairman, and he makes 2 tweaks to the washing machine to get it back in working order again, and then charges you a couple $100 to make the repair. And why is that? The reason is not that the parts and the work and the change itself was expensive. It was the fact that he knew what to repair, that's what you're really paying for in the service. So I think it's kind of similar here. It's like, if you knew where to go, this code change itself is not terribly hard, but it's about knowing where to go. Okay. So let's commit that. And we'll say delete task redirects to wherever next param indicates. And that should fix, what number was that one? I never remember these numbers. It's good. I don't need to. They're not important things to remember. There it is, 300. And before I push it up, let's just check the coverage. So I think the other case is still correct, where there is no next parameter, because we did add that if guard on that stuff. So I think it's all good. But still nice to have the confidence. This is the benefit of having 100% test coverage, is that I can run these tests and be like, oh yeah, the change was still good. And if it's not, then you go back and correct it. So that's all in good shape. Okay. What else should we try to tackle? I don't want to get too ambitious. I have some good ideas, but yeah, let's think about this for a minute. The other observation, all right, maybe this is an easy one, famous last words, but here's something that my spouse observed. So I added a new feature to the site. And so if you visit the schooldesk.app, which is my site these days, you're welcome to check it out. I added documentation, and the documentation takes you, let's see, click on help. It takes you to a new site over here. And this, if you're a programmer, should look fairly familiar, because it is. It's Sphinx. If you go to any Read the Docs site, hey, it's Sphinx. I cleaned it up and took out some of the programmery things, so there's no like edit on GitHub button, and I changed the colors a little bit to better match my particular system, but it's still a Sphinx project. The problem that she observed is that every link in here, you're stuck here. You can't actually get back to the app. Nowhere in here is there a link to the application. And I thought that was a really good, some in hindsight, obvious observation that was an oversight on my part. So what I need to do is poke at the theme probably, and worst case scenario, I can put a link somewhere at this home page that kind of clicks back. Still kind of a lame experience, but I think the best case is that this big gigantic button takes you back to the site. And then, if people want to live in the documentation, they can either click stuff in here or they could click this little home button, whatever, and do that. But there does it would benefit from having a way to get back to the site. So let's go to the theme and see if we can find some options that might make that possible. We want the read the docs, the docs theme. Where is it? Sphinx, read the RTD theme. And I'm hoping it's just a configuration option that I missed. So let's take a second to look through this and see if we can find it. Just style. Yeah, this is just linking back to the index. Navigation. We don't need a canonical URL. That's for something, that's for like crawlers and stuff to tell you what's the source of truth for your pages. Well, that's kind of a bummer. Let's see. Maybe we can view the code for this, and maybe there's like some option that's not really clear. Because it would be super nice if we could actually link to this. Let's look at this layout one. All right. So they've got the head area, which is none of that's relevant for what we need. There is an extra body block. I'm looking for some settings that are useful here. And I'm afraid that we're not going to find what we need. I haven't really seen many anchor tags. And when I do, they do seem to all be filled in with something like that, where it's a path to, and then it resolves to some URL. So I'm not really seeing like a customization point for that, which is unfortunate. Now, there might be ways that we can override the theme and possibly put in our own thing. Like there's this breadcrumbs here. That's breadcrumbs probably corresponds to what's listed up top here. And maybe I need to change it. Maybe this home icon needs to be like return to the site or something like that. Or maybe there's a way to customize this sidebar. There was, I think I saw up here, there was the extra sidebar thing. Let's return to the documentation of RTD and see if there was other stuff that they had about customization. I think this is all configuration stuff. I did add some custom CSS or JavaScript, but that's not really what we're going for here. That's not going to help. And yeah, well, bummer. Okay, I think we're going to have to get a little creative. Trying to imagine what we could do. There's probably information on the Sphinx website about customizing themes. let's see what we can find with this search like that. So Python, Sphinx, customize theme. Let's open up some links to check out what's there. So this person made like an extra theme and inherited from a theme. That is above and beyond. Okay, there's templates here. I think this might be more in line with what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to find something like this that we put in a templates directory and we can inherit or just maybe flat out replace one of the other files from the other theme and put in our own thing. And looks like there's some extension syntax here that we could probably even inherit from our own. Okay. So it sounds like there are techniques for doing this, and we just have to apply them well. So let's go back to, where do we need to go? We need to go to the docs, and I've got some directories in here and they're empty. And so we need to add some files to this. So let's test this theory out. Let's actually try and override something and see if we can put in just some text. And then from there, we can possibly change it to fit. I need to find out the right spot to do this. There's this extra body, which I don't know what that uses. Let's see if we can search, try extra body. Maybe there's another tag that uses it. Or maybe it's an extension point that's required by Sphinx. Okay, let's keep going. Let's try Python Sphinx extra body. Maybe it's a well-known hook. So let's come over here and extra body. There's extra head. So maybe they followed this pattern, and it could be what we want as some combination of, well, what? Let's go back to here, to the code. And this layout is probably for the whole theme. And I want to be able to return to the site on any page in the theme. So this does seem like the right place to do it. What I think we need to be able to do is extend this layout for the theme. So I think maybe step one is to probably do kind of a pass through that runs the documentation and calls this. So let's see if we can find, yeah, here's an example right here. So we add a new file in the template directory, and we're going to say extend layout. I think that's what we want. So let's come in here. We want layout HTML, and I'm going to add in extends layout. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say make docs. Hopefully that all works. All good. And now I'm going to try and put in block extra body is I think what it was called. And it's going to end the block, and then I want to put in something hello world, and hopefully that will just appear somewhere. And it was a chunk of HTML, so let's make it an H1, see if it just shows up. So we now have extra body, and we'll run make docs. It did that, and now we will open up a separate one, and I have a separate command that I've made called serve docs. Whoops, if I type it right, serve docs, and that should be on port 8000. Now the question is, did hello world get in here anywhere? It says there's a 1-for-1, there's a match somewhere. Is it hiding? Is it right here? Seems like there's some new, this is bigger than it should be. This could just be hidden. Hello, there it is, awesome. So we do have, so this technique works, great. I don't know if this is the right spot, but it's a start. So we now know the scheme for customizing Sphinx, or at least we've got a stepping stone. And it's just a matter of finding the right spot to put that into the project. So the part of the question that I then have is, well, where do I want to do this? I mean, ideally, I would love for it to replace this. I don't know that I'm going to get that. So we need to stare at this layout template and see what we need to do. And if it needs to come up here instead with this help documentation area, so be it. Actually, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Because this is nice that it's here, that this is the path for documentation, but I don't know how to actually override this. It doesn't seem very overridable. It's looks like we can add, but we can't change easily, I should say. But we'll keep poking at it until we get something. I'm pretty confident, at least to say, that it's not some obvious option. And I guess before we invest a bunch more time, I'll give this one last look of the options and see if any of them ring out as different link stuff that we can use. No. Okay, I'm going to close this, and we're going to get rid of that. And we've got the right nudge from Stack Overflow. Thanks, Stack Overflow. And I don't think we even needed this themes site. So we've got the topic on HTML theming. I'll leave that up in case we need it. And we'll leave that, and we'll leave the generated documentation. So again, remember, my goal ideally would be replace this link if we can, but we may not get it. And let's close the real site, otherwise it's going to confuse me at some point. And I don't think we need up the actual app. We're in documentation mode at this stage. Okay, so here's our layout file. Where else does it include some HTML files? So build some HTML files out of page names. Because there are other files in this directory, and I want to make sure I understand what they're for. We have breadcrumbs, specifically, footer, layout, search. All right, let's just look through some of these, because I might be trying to bite off too much here by overwriting all of layout, and maybe there's other areas in some of these more specific pages that we can look at, but I don't know how many blocks were provided for this. Well, okay. Here is the breadcrumbs template, and it has a block for breadcrumbs. So I could conceivably like copy this chunk and then just add this. So we do have strategies to change that. That's good. My preference would be not to put it in the breadcrumbs, because as I said, it's like if I was a user and I was on the documentation, this home button is more likely to me to think of this as the home. And if this was taking me back to the site and it was the only way to get back to the site, that would be very not obvious. Meanwhile, this gigantic button that says School Desk that has the logo is absolutely where I would think you'd want to go to get back to the site. That's my read on it. So this is above the search area, so I have a feeling it's one of these search templates. So it's either a search box or search. That's the actual search form itself. That's not what we want. So let's look at search. This is the template for the search page. Not what we want either. That's like when I think what that's referring to is if I go here and I say classroom, that's this page, this searching page. Which I don't even know what the heck it's doing. I'm not really sure how this all works. I think it's JavaScript backed, and I don't know what index it's building, so I don't really know. Is this kind of spinning indefinitely? What happened there? Stemmer? Oh, great. Well, some other problem that I need to investigate probably later. Broken search. All right. Not worrying about that though. So anyway, the point is that this is not the right page. This Sphinx, this search template that we were just on is not where we want to be. So if you're not in breadcrumbs, almost certainly not in footer, you're not the search site itself or the search box, and I doubt it's the versions thing. So maybe it has to be the layouts. Let's return to the layout file and find the logo portion. Oh, good. There is a block. Oh, that's encouraging. Where does that block end? End block all the way down here. Is that the only block? Okay. So I think this is the chunk we want to override. So if there's a logo, the image source, it's just an image tag, but it's all getting wrapped up in this bigger anchor. And I think this is the part that we want to customize to make sure that it doesn't go where it's going right now. So rather than what's here, I think I want to replace all of this. Theme display version. I think I turned that off too. So it might just be that we customize it and we replace this block just completely. Just like rip out the parts that I don't need, this theme display version stuff, and rip out the conditional logic, because I'm already customizing this. Like I know I have a logo here, so I don't need to ask. So I just need to put in, like this site, this theme is made generic for anybody that wants to use it, but I have a specific use case that I've already built for and now have a need to customizing it the way I want to. Okay, so that's all good. So I want to go to, we still want to extend layout, but now we're going to extend sidebar title. Sidebar title. And I'm going to start, we're not going to, there's probably some way to invoke like a superclass kind of version thing on it, but I'm just going to take all the content and copy and paste it into my file. It's a totally reasonable way to begin with the inability to do exactly what I want, that this is perfectly valid. So let's get rid of this. And they've got some comment here about, what is this about? Not strictly valid HTML, but it's the only way to display scale it property without weird scripting or heaps of work. I don't even know what it's talking about. I don't know how that's not valid HTML. It's a source tag. Yeah, no idea what they're referring to. We need to leave that. We have the logo. And I don't know what the comment is. I'm going to delete that. And so the other setting that we have turned on is this theme logo only. Actually, don't need Chrome anymore. Let's get that out of here. So I've included at the top here, it says school desk right now. And I included that because I wanted to just a kind of ever-present reminder that this is school desk. So I want to keep that. So it's not the logo only here. That's what this path is for. So we're not going to go down that path. So we want the else path. I'm going to delete all that stuff. And then we are left with this right here. But instead of the path to the master doc, I'm going to change all of that and replace it with the root URL. Now, for working locally with docs, that will work. Because when I'm serving it from this local host server thing, it is at port 8000. When I deploy this to my actual site, going to slash is going to return back to the site. In fact, maybe I want to return, no, this is fine. Let's keep it simple for now. So this should take me back just to slash. And we can check this out when it's all done to make sure that it matches the URL that I want. So let's do make docs again. And if we refresh this page, this nonsense of this hello world at the top should go away, so that should collapse back to normal. This link is now, should be, we actually view the page source, we'll have a much simpler link up here. Yep. So just slash, it's everything that I wanted to put in there and exactly where I wanted to go. Okay, great. This templates directory was not committed before. There was no kind of get ignore in there, but now we're going to add it. And so we'll commit this like this, which we're extending the layout. We're changing the sidebar title. And we'll change, so we'll say change docs icon to return to main site. And that fixes number, what was it? 301. Okay. We'll push all that up. And to finish it off, because this is something that kind of only I think is the right thing to do, but I haven't confirmed, I'm going to go ahead and do a deploy, and we'll go check out the live site. We'll go to the docs and see if it worked. And then we'll talk about the things that are going to be coming up in future streams. So this takes a couple minutes. We've pushed up all of this stuff. So we've cleaned out 300, 301, and 289. If I push those up, those should go away. Yep, they did. What else is there to do? So cleaned out that. We didn't really need the theming much. I'm sure we could have learned a ton about reading the themes, but sometimes when you want to get into these very specific tasks, it just makes more sense to poke around and see what you can glean off of it than trying to absorb everything you need to know about themes. There's so much stuff in here, and I'm sure it's very educational. But sometimes I like doing that. But other times when you want to solve a problem, if you can laser focus on the problem, then you get a quicker result. So we're going to be done with those two things. We don't actually need all auth. And what's left? So right now it's already built the documentation. And because of the way I'm serving it from the Django application, I compress everything with gzip and Brotli. And so that when the Django app serves it, it can serve a smaller file. So that's what you see is all that compression. But I have to do that compression myself because I did some kind of, basically, well, I extended the Django middleware white noise in a way that was not really how its intended use is, which isn't to me to say that I broke it, but I'm just kind of bending the rules a little bit. There are past streams if you're curious about what I did on that topic. So it has to run this final command. There's no migrations to run. So now the site should be up. So now we should be able to go to the school desk. It's going to take a second to load because the Heroku just finished deploying the slug. It's probably actively switching stuff out. So I'm the first page load here. And I get to bear that cost of being the first requester. But if we go down and we return to the documentation, so I had the help documentation open up in a new tab at least. But now we should be able to, if you can already see the link in the lower left corner, it is taking us back, which is where we're going to go. So now we have a method to go from the documentation back to the site. And everybody who wants to stay on the site can click around on these other things. And if they need to get back here, the only place that gets slightly harder to return to is this page in particular. The only way you get here is by clicking this link now. So if you're on frequently asked questions, you can't just click over here. You have to click this. But the reality, I think, is that not many people will need to come back here. And if they really do, they can hit the back button on their browser. That would work. That's one method. They can click this. I guess anyway, it's a valuable trade-off in my opinion of the big thing that's here that's obviously clickable when you hover over it takes you back to the product rather than having no link at all to get to the product, which is feels pretty good. Okay, so we tackled 3 separate things this evening. The 2 of them were they bugs? I don't know if they were bugs, but they were definitely valuable feature additions that came from, well, you could view them as a bug if you viewed it as a usability problem. Of one was, didn't return you to the place you'd like to go to, and so that got fixed. And then the other one was, what was the number? Well, now I'm blanking on what we did. Geez, it was not that long ago, y'all. Oh, this visibility. Okay, yeah, this was another usability thing to make an icon appear where it would be better. And then the last thing actually seemed like a bug, but you could argue that it's not really. But it does improve usability. So again, these are all little bits of polish that that you experience from users using the site. Like I wouldn't have necessarily known that, oh yeah, and if I'm playing around and I'm actually reading documentation and I want to return to the site, well, my headspace when I was creating the docs is like, you're there to read docs, and that's what you're doing. But obviously, at some point, you want to go back, and it was a pretty big oversight to include that. The site is launched and available out there, so I have plenty of work to do. There are a lot of things that would help make the experience better for users, namely like keeping in touch with them. Do I do C++? I did do C++ in previous jobs, but I have not done C++ in a good number of years. I did some satellite software development. I used to work for a defense contractor, and it was communications satellite software, nothing scary. So if you ever did, and you might, if you ever watch a SpaceX launch and you saw there's some of their earlier launches with the Iridium customer, as the Iridium satellite phone network, and I helped build the application software on their next set of satellites. But it's been a long time since I've touched C++. Anyway, getting back to what's left to do here is like I need to be able to engage customers. So I have some tools, and I unfortunately I don't want to share people's actual emails with you. Maybe I can quickly show it from the local data so you can get a sense of it. But I made some tools to check on how are people actually doing with their onboarding process. So if I go to the app and look at things once I'm logged in, you'll be able to see it for a moment. And I made this new dashboard to give me some tools that I can view data about. And little utility views that I had for doing some other stuff, like the images that I made for the site. I built them in Tailwind and then took screenshots from here. Anyway, just little things like that. But one of these things that I made is this onboarding funnel, where I want to be able to track, has the user checked all the boxes that I expect for them to be successful? And I think one observation that I've had is that a lot of people that have tried it haven't really gone through and completed all of the things that I expect for them to make run a successful school year. And so I'm thinking that it might make sense to email people if they need a little nudge of like, hey, we see you add courses, and next thing to do is add a task, and those kind of things of email drip campaigns that are based upon the actions that the user has or has not taken in the app. Other surveys. I also need to do things related to I have users that are now trialing, but I have no code that will ever expire them. So they are trialing forever. I don't think any of them are actively using it, so it's not really a loss for me in terms of money. But I do need some sort of scheme that will actually age out users from their trial. So I have to write that code as well. So that's probably what we'll work on in the future. But that's kind of wrapping us up for the evening. Thank you for joining in, and I will chat with you all another time. So have a good night. Take care.